This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Wednesday, January 14th, 2026. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
The death toll from nationwide protests in Iran has spiked to at least 2,000 people killed. I'm Charles, deLedesma.
The Supreme Court hears arguments on transgenders in women's sports.
The justices were very careful.
I'm Joan Jones.
Former President Bill Clinton and his wife say they will refuse to comply with the congressional subpoena at Donahue, Washington.
Former Special Prosecutor Jack Smith to testify next week. I'm Clayton Neville.
Stocks are coming off a down day as investors worry about Fed independence and inflation held steady in December. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
China's calling on the Canadian government to set a foreign policy path independent of the United States. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
All ahead on America in the Morning. President Trump is drawing a red line when it comes to the Iranian government harming protesters, saying he'll take very strong action if the Islamic Republic begins hanging anti-government demonstrators. This as the UN is reporting as many as 2,500 people have died, and CBS News is reporting that the number may be as high as 20,000 feared dead. Correspondent Charles deLedesma has the latest on events in Iran and the president's announcement that help is on the way.
Iran is on my mind when I see the kind of death that is happening over there, we think. So we're going to get some accurate numbers. We'll get some accurate numbers as to what's happening with regard to the killing. The killing looks like it's significant.
Activists say the death toll from nationwide protests in Iran has spiked to at least 2,000 people killed. This level of violence around protests hasn't been seen in Iran in decades. The US-based human rights activists news agency, which has been accurate in previous unrest in recent years, has the latest toll. It says well over 1,800 of the dead over more than 2 weeks of protests were protesters, while 135 were government-affiliated. Another 9 children were killed, and 9 civilians, the group says, were not taking part in the protests, also killed. With the internet down in Iran, gauging the demonstrations from abroad is difficult.
The message is they've got to show humanity. They've got a big problem, and I hope they're not going to be killing people. And I'm going to have a report very soon. It would seem to me that they have been badly misbehaving, but that is not confirmed.
The video purports to show mourners at a morgue after the extensive violent crackdown. People are seen walking by bodies in body bags, attempting to identify them. People can be heard wailing in grief. The footage matches other images of the facility online. People with knowledge of the location and the US-based human rights activist news agency said the video shows the Car Isaac Forensic Medical Center. The US-based agency says aside from the hundreds of deaths, over 10,600 people have been detained during the 2 weeks of protests.
I say save their names because they'll pay a very big price. Then I've canceled all meetings with the Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. And all I say to them is help is on its way. You saw that I put tariffs on anybody doing business with Iran.
Iran's government has not offered overall casualty figures. I'm Charles deLedesma.
It appears the Supreme Court is leaning toward upholding state bans on transgender athletes from competing in girls' and women's sports. An update on the testimony before the justices with Correspondent Joan Jones.
After 3 hours of testimony, the court's 6 conservative justices gave strong indications they may uphold the bans issued in 27 states that prevent biological males from competing in girls' and women's sports. West Virginia Attorney General John McCuskey speaking to CNN's Jake Tapper.
Our solicitor, Michael Williams, delivered a masterclass in constitutional litigation. I mean, he was just remarkable. And the justices were really buying into our arguments about fairness and safety.
One particular exchange caught court watchers' attention. It's between attorney Kathleen Barnett, she represents a biological male involved in this case, and Justice Sam Alito. He asked, what does it mean to be a boy or a girl, a man or a woman, for equal protection purposes?
We do not have a definition for the court.
Well, how can a court determine whether there's discrimination on the basis of sex without knowing what sex means?
This is the first time the nation's highest court has taken up this issue of trans people in sports. Justice Brett Kavanaugh's view.
For the individual girl who does not make the team or doesn't get on the stand for the medal or doesn't make all league, there's a harm there. And I think we can't sweep that aside.
Liberal Justice Sonia Sotomayor sees it differently.
There's no question here that a male who identifies as a female, but it's a male, is being excluded from a female sport. By its nature, that's a sex classification.
Whatever the court decides, the impacts could be widespread to include bathroom policies and government-issued IDs. President Trump last year issued an executive order targeting states that allow biological males to compete in women's sports using Title IX as the basis for his order. We'll know how the court rules on this issue in June. I'm Joan Jones.
The top stories of the day are sponsored by Sleep Number. Enjoy personalized comfort for better sleep night after night. And now, the more you buy, the more you save on beds, bases, and more. Limited time, only at Sleep Number or sleepnumber.com. Epstein hearing. The Clintons won't participate. When America in the Morning continues after these messages. America in the Morning continues. Thanks for listening. Although areas of lake effect snow continue along the upper Great Lakes, most of America will be quiet today with some record-setting warmth. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Danielle Erzman.
After a not-so-cold day across much of the country on Tuesday, most places experienced high temperatures 5 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit above historical averages and will again today. Great Falls and Billings, Montana, for example, are forecast to be in the 60s and may break their daily record highs. Normally for mid-January, those cities have a high temperature of 35 to 36 degrees. The next blast of cold air will arrive for much of the Midwest and Great Lakes region today, with Chicago, for example, forecast to be just under 30 degrees after reaching a high of 43 degrees Tuesday afternoon. Lake effect snow will begin to break out across Michigan, northwestern Indiana, and Ohio today as the storm strengthens over the northeast. This storm is forecast to bring snow across much of the Appalachians later today and tonight, while rain and drizzle will spread across the northeast tonight, with some places even changing over from rain to snow, as the cold front associated with the storm will lead to a rapid freeze-up for many. Even places that may only receive rain could produce a glaze on untreated surfaces late tonight as temperatures crash. The cold air will also reach as far south as Jacksonville and approach Orlando late at night. Otherwise, the western United States will remain dry and warm, with the exception of some dense fog in the Central Valley of California, but Fresno could still reach 60 degrees. And that's the weather across America. Skinny Atlas, New York today. Breezy in the morning, cloudy with a bit of rain changing over to some snow at night, and a high of 43. Palm Springs, California today. Very warm with plenty of sunshine and a high of 86. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Danielle Erzman.
Remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. A former president, along with a former Secretary of State, could soon face contempt charges. Correspondent Ed Donahue reports Bill and Hillary Clinton are saying they will not take part in a House committee hearing regarding Jeffrey Epstein.
Former President Bill Clinton and his wife, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, say they will refuse to comply with the congressional subpoena for them to testify in an investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. The Clintons are slamming a Republican-controlled committee's attempts for them to testify as legally invalid. Oversight Committee Chair James Comer has questions for the Clintons.
Jeffrey Epstein visited the White House 17 times while Bill Clinton was president. I've been in Congress 9 years. I think I've been to the White House 9 times in 9 years. Epstein was in the White House double the amount of time that I was under one president.
The Clintons told Comer he is on the cusp of a process literally designed to result in their imprisonment. Comer was asked if President Trump should testify.
He answers questions every day about Epstein.
Will you rule out?
Well, you can't bring in a current president.
Comer says he'll begin contempt of Congress proceedings next week against Bill and Hillary Clinton. Ed Donahue, Washington.
Former Justice Department Special Counsel Jack Smith is set to testify publicly next week about his investigations into President Donald Trump that led to 2 indictments that were eventually thrown out. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
Former Special Prosecutor Jack Smith has pushed back at suggestions his investigations were meant to stop President Trump from reclaiming the presidency in 2024. But lawmakers have questions.
So we're going to have questions about Mr. Smith when we bring him in next Thursday, like we always plan to do. We're going to bring him in next Thursday for a hearing at 10 a.m., public hearing, where we'll be able to ask him about this issue and a host of others.
Congressman Jim Jordan, the Republican chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, spoke with Fox's Hannity about the investigation.
I think the big question, frankly, is why? Jack Smith could subpoena anybody and everybody he wanted. In fact, he went out and got phone records for dozens of members of Congress, for goodness sake.
Jordan says the committee will show that Jack Smith was part of a bigger effort to bring down Trump. I'm Clayton Neville.
New numbers on the economy from the government and food inflation. When America in the Morning continues after these messages. Here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger with a check of midweek business.
Wall Street opens this morning after a down day for stocks. Lots of swings yesterday. The S&P 500 index pulled back from a record high.
It won't take much to see volatility increase. We just had 3 straight years of double-digit growth in the S&P, up 16% last year, 23% in 2024, and in 2023 we had 24%. So the expectations are high, the valuations are rich. Because I have conviction in the underlying strength of the economy. Volatility increases, use it to your advantage and buy on dips.
That's Hightower's Stephanie Link on CNBC. Inflation came in as expected for December, and the CPI Consumer Price Index sitting at 2.7%, holding steady from November. But it's just about double where it was in 2019 before the pandemic. Food inflation really hit last month. Here's CNBC's Carl Quintanilla with Mad Money host Jim Cramer.
Look, shelter's still too high. Food at home still too high.
Yeah, grocery.
Yes.
7/10. That's the biggest monthly gain in about 3 years.
Food's too high. A lot of that is tariffs. A lot of that is, say, for instance, when you deal with Brazil. Brazil would be a way to get cattle down. Cattle is a principal source of food inflation. I'm surprised the president hasn't addressed it yet.
Crude oil hit its highest yesterday. Since before last Thanksgiving, you may see prices at the pump tick higher. If you're seeing higher airfares this spring, it may be because airlines are putting in more premium seats at the front of the planes, leaving fewer regular seats. And when there's higher demand for fewer seats, prices go up. Here's CNBC's aviation reporter Phil LeBeau with CNBC's Joe Kernan.
Are fares like skyrocketing or something? I've done a couple of things recently. It's like, wait a second. I don't remember these types of numbers a year ago, even.
Look, there has been capacity coming out of the system. The first quarter for the industry in the U.S. may be the first profitable first quarter since 2019. A lot of that has to do with capacity coming out of the system. Last summer, there was way too much within the system, hurting profitability.
Sales of newly built homes were better in September and October than first thought in new data delayed because of the government shutdown.
The big takeaway is that October sales were 18.7% higher year over year and the highest October read since 2020. Now, this count is of signed contracts. So it's people out shopping when mortgage rates first dropped at the start of September, then just kind of hung out between 6.2 and 6.4% on the 30-year fixed. Today, it is, of course, much lower at 6.07%.
CNBC's Diana Olick. On today's watch list, earnings are coming from Bank of America, Citigroup, and Wells Fargo. We also get retail sales numbers and existing home sales numbers. The Detroit Auto Show is ramping up.
Lots covered today. CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. When we return on America in the Morning, China snubs the U.S., favoring Canada after these messages. This is America in the Morning. America's second largest trading partner is considering other options, unhappy with the tariffs and trading concerns of the Trump administration. Lisa Dwyer reports that China is aiming to capitalize on the U.S.-Canada strained relations with a visit by the Canadian Prime Minister.
As the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney visits China, China's state media is calling on the Canadian government to set a foreign policy path independent of the United States in what it calls strategic autonomy. The Chinese government bristled at former U.S. President Joe Biden's efforts to strengthen relations with Europe, Australia, India, Canada, and others to confront China. Now China sees an opportunity to loosen those ties. Carney, for his part, has focused on trade, describing the trip to China as part of a move to forge new partnerships around the world to end Canada's economic reliance on the American market. Canadians were angered by tariffs on their exports to the U.S. imposed by President Donald Trump, and after Trump suggested that Canada could become America's 51st state. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
President Trump announced his administration will cease federal payments to sanctuary cities and states with sanctuary policies starting next month, while citing the jurisdictions protect criminals and fuel fraud and crime. Speaking at the Detroit Economic Club, Trump said the move is aimed at cities and states that refuse to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. The administration's actions come as a federal judge temporarily blocked the Trump administration from stopping subsidies tied to child care programs in 5 states, including Minnesota, amid allegations of widespread fraud. America in the Morning for Wednesday, January 14th, 2026 is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
President Trump touts his economic policies and flips off a critic during a stop in Detroit. I'm John Stolnis in Washington.
Finger-pointing and tension in Minnesota. I'm Clayton Neville.
The Trump administration has designated the Muslim Brotherhood as terrorist organizations. I'm Marcela Sanchez.
A Chicago doctor has been charged in the killings of his ex-wife and her dentist husband in Columbus, Ohio. I'm Mike Hempen.
Scott Adams, creator of the workplace comic strip Dilbert, has passed away. I'm Kevin Carr.
Emmy-winning actor-director Timothy Busfield has turned himself in to police in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm Jennifer King.
Back after these messages. America in the Morning continues. Thanks for listening. Although areas of lake effect snow continue along the upper Great Lakes, most of America will be quiet today with some record-setting warmth expected for many. Could that be a sign of warming things to come just ahead of Groundhog Day next month? Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist Danielle Erzman with the national forecast.
High pressure will continue to be the dominant weather pattern across the West today. For places such as Seattle and Los Angeles, dry weather is in store again, with temperatures well above historical averages, which will include the Southwest and Rockies as well. Los Angeles, for example, is expected to reach a high of 86 degrees. While it won't be quite as warm in the Northwest, temperatures will still be in the 50s for both Seattle and Portland. The dry and balmy weather will continue through the rest of this week into the weekend. Meanwhile, after a not-so-cold day across much of the nation on Tuesday, the next blast of cold air will arrive for the Great Lakes region today. Chicago, for example, is forecast to be just shy of 30 degrees after being in the 40s Tuesday afternoon. A powerful storm will then impact the Northeast and Great Lakes today, bringing a mix of rain and snow from Chicago to New York City by tonight. Lake-effect snow will also break out across Michigan, northwestern Ohio, and Indiana, while snow is expected to fall across much of the Appalachians later today into tonight. Precipitation will fall mainly as rain across the Northeast this afternoon and evening, before a quick change to snow late tonight into tomorrow morning for some. This storm's cold front will also push the colder air as far south as Orlando late tonight and also lead to a rapid freeze up there. As we head through the rest of this week, additional rounds of rain and snow and cold air is expected. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist Danielle Erzman.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Simply search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio will meet today with the foreign ministers of both Denmark and Greenland to discuss President Trump's objectives to either acquire Greenland or possibly take it by force. Correspondent Emma Burrows reports from Greenland on the tensions as the president ratchets up talk of taking over the world's largest island, straining relations with U.S. allies in NATO, as well as residents of the country, many of whom say they do not want to become part of the United States. Audio courtesy of Ireland's RTE News.
We're here in Greenland, which is at the centre of a geopolitical storm. President Donald Trump wants to own Greenland, and the White House hasn't ruled taking the island by force.
If we don't take Greenland, Russia or China will, and I'm not letting that happen. One way or the other, we're going to have Greenland.
There are plenty of international press in the capital, Nuuk, asking residents what they think. Everyone has said they don't want to join the United States, and that Greenland is not for sale.
I'm afraid they have no respect for us, for my country, and for our country.
What I think is he wants to make Greenlandic minerals to pay off the national debt of United States. Yeah, I've seen quite few who were concerned.
I'm scared.
What the reasons behind it, we don't get it, really. There's been a collaboration with the USA for many, many, many years. So it's not all of the sudden, but it's really aggressive now and it's getting kind of annoying.
Greenland is a semi-autonomous region that's part of Denmark, which is a member of NATO. The Danish Prime Minister has warned, if Trump takes it over, it would basically be the end of the alliance. Greenland's important because as the ice melts, the possibility of shorter trade routes to Asia opens up, and it could be easier to extract and transport untapped deposits of critical minerals, which are needed for things like computers and phones. Trump's also said he wants the island to expand America's security and deter Russia and China, but experts say he can do that without owning it. American, Danish and Greenlandic officials are meeting to discuss the island's future, but it's likely to be a tough discussion.
President Trump traveled to Detroit, Michigan for a speech aimed at touting his economic policies, but also made headlines for his response to a heckler while touring a Ford factory plant. With that story from Washington, here's our John Stolness.
A worker in the background there shouting pedophile protector at the president in relation to the Jeffrey Epstein case during the president's tour of the plant, to which the president is seen on video giving the unseen worker the middle finger and appearing to mouth a profanity. The auto worker was fired later in the day for his actions. In a speech to the Detroit Economic Club after his factory visit, the president proclaimed his tariff policies have brought about a booming economy.
Every prediction the critics made about our tariff policy has failed to materialize. The evidence shows overwhelmingly that the tariffs are not paid by American consumers, that they're paid by foreign nations and middlemen.
Trump has faced scrutiny from some Republicans as well as all Democrats in Congress for his approach to Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, who revealed this week he is the subject of a criminal probe that Powell says is aimed at forcing him to do the bidding of President Trump and lower interest rates.
Oh, they announced great numbers. It's great, great, great. And the market goes down because they immediately raise rates. No, when the market goes up, they should lower rates.
The president again disputed Americans should be worried about high prices.
In the coming weeks, I will be laying out even more plans to help bring back affordability. And again, remember, that's a fake word by Democrats. Prices were too high. They caused the high price.
He also touched on the situation in Iran, where thousands are believed dead in protests that are now nearly 2 weeks old.
We saved their names because they'll pay a very big price. Then I've canceled all meetings with the Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. And all I say to them is help is on its way.
The president also said he plans to announce a health care plan this week that Republicans on Capitol Hill have been unable to get across the finish line so far. John Stolness, Washington.
As protests continue in Minnesota, so does the back and forth between state and federal leaders. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
President Trump again chiming in on tension in Minneapolis as calls for accountability continue to grow following the fatal shooting of Renee Good by an ICE officer last week. The Department of Homeland Security has alleged that the 37-year-old was trying to run over officers when an ICE agent fatally shot her. Critics say the shooting wasn't justified. President Trump standing by continued ICE operations in Minnesota.
Our ICE operation in Minnesota, for example, is finding hundreds of killers, violent predators, and child rapists, some of the worst criminal offenders anywhere in the world, murderers all over the place. All we want to do is get them out.
House Majority Whip Tom Emmer and other Republicans back the president.
Law enforcement officers are repeatedly harassed, assaulted, and demonized by paid agitators and failed and corrupt politicians who care more about scoring points with the radicals in their party than enforcing the rule of law and keeping Minnesota safe.
President Trump announced this week plans to revoke the citizenship of any naturalized citizen who's been convicted of fraud. Meanwhile, protests ongoing in Minneapolis, with ICE still there.
The agitators and the rioters here in Minneapolis need to understand that our operations will continue unabated despite the violence they perpetrate against law enforcement.
Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino spoke with CBS News.
The de-escalation and a lot of those police chiefs that you mentioned don't seem to de-escalate. They seem to escalate.
Are you de-escalating?
Absolutely. Every day we de-escalate.
The fallout becoming more evident. At least 4 federal prosecutors operating out of Minneapolis have resigned out of concerns that the department is focusing on investigating Renee Good for ties to groups that have been protesting ICE in the city. In response, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz called the resignations, quote, the latest sign that President Trump is pushing nonpartisan career professionals out of the DOJ and replacing them with his sycophants. I'm Clayton Neville.
Sanctions imposed on the Muslim Brotherhood. When America in the Morning continues after these messages. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on 3 branches of the Muslim Brotherhood, accusing them of posing a risk to the U.S. and other regions. Correspondent Marcela Sanchez has an update.
The Trump administration has designated the Lebanese, Jordanian, and Egyptian chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood as terrorist organizations. The group was founded in Egypt in the 1920s and is seen by many as the origin of political Islam. The Brotherhood's leaders say it renounced violence decades ago and seeks to set up Islamic rule through elections and other peaceful means, though some of the group's offshoots have armed wings. The State Department designated the Lebanese branch a foreign terrorist organization, the most severe of the labels, while the Treasury Department listed the Jordanian and Egyptian branches as specially designated global terrorists for providing support to Hamas. I'm Marcela Sanchez.
An ex-husband charged in the killing of an Ohio couple made a court appearance following his arrest in Illinois. Correspondent Mike Hempen reports.
A Chicago doctor has been charged in the killings of his ex-wife and her dentist husband in Columbus, Ohio. Michael David McKee has been charged with premeditated aggravated murder in the shooting deaths of 39-year-old Monique Tepe, whom he divorced in 2017, and 37-year-old Dr. Spencer Tepe. They were found dead in their Columbus home on December 30th. The arrest ends nearly 2 weeks of speculation about the killings. Police found no signs of forced entry, nothing was stolen, and no weapon was found. The couple's 2 young children and their dog were left unharmed in the home. The family says in a statement that it trusts the justice system to hold McKee accountable. I'm Mike Hempen.
A Navy sailor learns his fate for selling information to China. Correspondent Lisa Dwyer reports.
25-year-old Jinchao Wei was a former U.S. Navy sailor who was convicted of selling technical and operating manuals for ships and operating systems to an intelligence officer working for China. Wei was sentenced to more than 16 years in prison. Wei was an engineer for the amphibious assault ship USS Essex and one of 2 California-based sailors charged in 2023. Prosecutors say Wei was recruited via social media in 2022 by a Chinese intelligence intelligence officer who portrayed himself as a naval enthusiast working for the state-owned China Shipbuilding Industry Corporation and was paid more than $12,000. Wei sold the Chinese intelligence officer 60 technical and operating manuals that detailed the operations of multiple systems aboard the Essex and similar ships, including those for weapons control. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
The U.S. Senate takes a big step creating regulations on how cryptocurrencies are going to be regulated. Chuck Palm has that as the new old tech guy.
U.S. senators have unveiled a long-awaited draft legislation aimed at finally putting clear rules around the cryptocurrency market. This bill would create a federal framework to define when digital assets like Bitcoin or Ethereum tokens count as securities, as overseen by the Securities and Exchange Commission, or commodities, which would fall primarily under the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the regulator the crypto industry has long preferred for spot market trading. Key provisions include giving the CFTC authority over day-to-day crypto spot markets while requiring joint rules-making with the SEC on certain issues. It also builds on last year's stablecoin law by prohibiting crypto firms from paying plain interest just for holding a dollar-pegged stablecoin, addressing banking concerns about the deposit flight, but allowing rewards for activities like making payments or joining loyalty programs. Companies would have to make clear disclosures about those incentives. Crypto trade groups are encouraged by the momentum, though some lobbyists doubt that full passage this year with midterms looming. Banks, meanwhile, are pushing back on the parts that they see as risky financial stability. This is a potential game changer if it becomes law, providing the legal clarity the industry says it needs to grow without relying on changeable regulatory guidance. Follow me at thenewoldtechguy.com. I'm Chuck Palm.
Robert Workman has a check of midweek sports on America in the Morning.
Make it 9 NFL coaching vacancies as of this morning. Veteran Steelers boss Mike Tomlin stepped down Tuesday after 19 seasons. He never posted a losing record, made 13 trips to the playoffs, and won a ring in Super Bowl 43. NBA, fourth time's the charm for the Thunder. They finally figured out how to beat the Spurs, 119-98. 34 from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. The defending champs have only lost 7 times as they reach the midway point of the NBA season, but 3 of those have come against San Antonio. Elsewhere, the Timberwolves went wire-to-wire on the Bucks, 139-106. Minnesota shot 60% from the floor and hit a season-high 22 three-pointers. Nuggets repelled the Pelicans. Jamal Murray had 35 points. Big wins for the Lakers and the Warriors. Close calls for the Heat and the Rockets. College hoops, number 2 Iowa State took its first loss of the season, 84-63 at Kansas. Cyclones coach TJ Otzelberger.
And that was an absolute beatdown tonight from the start, in their favor, unfortunately.
So just 4 unbeaten teams remain in college basketball. Top-ranked Arizona, number 10 Vanderbilt, unranked Miami of Ohio, and number 8 Nebraska, which nailed Oregon last night 90-55. The Huskers now 17-0 and in the top 10 for the first time since 1966. Hockey, the Lightning nipped the Penguins 2-1 in a shootout for win number 11 in a row. Senators stopped the Canucks 2-1. Vancouver has lost 8 straight. Ducks snapped a 9-game slide with a 3-1 win over the Stars. Blue Jackets scored 3 times in the third to beat the Flames for their new coach, Rick Bowness. Shutout wins for the Bruins and Blues, Capitals and Predators worked overtime, and victories for the Mammoth and Jets. That's Wednesday Sports.
When we return on America in the Morning, sexual abuse allegations against A-list actor after these messages. The creator of the satirical comic strip Dilbert that poked fun at bad bosses has passed away. Entertainment reporter Kevin Carr looks back at the career of Scott Adams.
Scott Adams, the writer and creator of Dilbert, has passed away from prostate cancer at age 68. His ex-wife, Shelley Miles, fought through tears as she announced the news on Adams' X live stream on Tuesday morning, reading a statement he had written days before.
I had an amazing life. I gave it everything I had.
Last May, Adams made his diagnosis public, still appearing on his YouTube show Real Coffee with Scott Adams. His last broadcast was on January 8th, showing him in a weakened state.
Based on how I feel, I don't know if there'll be a show tomorrow or ever again. If I feel better, there will be. If I feel the way I felt today, this might be our last show.
Adams launched the comic strip Dilbert in 1989. In the 90s, however, the strip developed into the quintessential workplace satire. It featured a rogues gallery of eccentric, all-too-real characters like the inept pointy-hair boss and the workplace slacker, as well as more broad comical characters like the megalomaniacal Dogbert and the cutthroat head of HR, Catbert. The comic strip spawned more than 50 books as well as an animated TV series.
Phase 1, we need a name for the product.
That's actually the last step. You've got the transparencies out of order.
Doesn't like being corrected.
Dilbert was pulled from syndication after Adams made some controversial comments in 2023. However, Adams reinvented himself thanks to social media and resurrected Dilbert as a webcomic later that year. I'm Kevin Carr.
Actor Timothy Busfield has been booked on child sex abuse charges in Mexico and is denying all allegations against him. Correspondent Jennifer King reports. Audio courtesy TMZ.
I had to get a lawyer. Saturday, I got in a car and drove 2,000 miles to Albuquerque. I'm going to confront these lies. They're horrible. They're all lies. And I did not do anything to those little boys.
Emmy-winning actor-director Timothy Busfield, known from his work on TV shows like The West Wing and 30-something, has turned himself in to police in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Authorities had issued a warrant on 2 counts of criminal sexual contact of a minor and 1 count of child abuse. In an exclusive video posted by TMZ, Busfield says the allegations are lies.
I'm going to fight it. I'm going to fight it with a great team. And I'm going to be exonerated. I know I am, because this is all so wrong and all lies.
The complaint alleges that between 2022 and 2024, Busfield inappropriately touched 2 twin boys, child actors, on the set of The Cleaning Lady, a TV series Busfield was directing. In a previous interview, he told authorities he may have picked up and tickled the children because the set was a playful environment. According to the complaint, one of the boys has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety, and told a social worker he has nightmares about Busfield. I'm Jennifer King.
That's our show for today. America in the Morning for Wednesday, January 14th, 2026, is produced by Jeff McKay. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.